Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, let your kingdom, your values, Lord, your system, your rule be done in this meeting, in this state, and in this nation. Empower us to always value, to speak, and to work together with those values. Lord, we always look to you and say, well, how is it in heaven? What is the truth that is exercised in heaven? Let us align with that. Now, Lord, we thank you and bless you for this day. We thank you for every person present, for our beautiful featured speakers. And Father, we just honor you, we bless you, and we say, Lord, your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth today as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
And I'm going to ask our first Vice President, Lynn Cox Graham, to lead us in the pledge.
Please join with me as we pledge allegiance to our beloved flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to begin by introducing some special guests that are with us today. First of all, right over here to my left is our dear friend, Tom Shevler, our former Secretary of State. And we are so happy to have State Representative Ray Garofalo with us. Is Denise Amoroso here? Okay, yes. Hey, Denise. Okay. With the Metro Council from District 8. So glad she's here. And Jerry Bouette, who is with the Republican State Central Committee. I know he's here. Right here. Okay, there you go. And I think we have Terry White with Garrett Ray's office. Is Terry here? Yay, there you are, Terry. Also, Victoria Kieran, I might not be saying that correctly, who's with Garrett Ray's office. Yay. And did Diane make it today? I didn't see Diane. Yeah, Diane, maybe she might not have made it today. Okay. Okay. Amber Thomas with the LAGOP. And we're so proud of this fantastic, accomplished woman who is a dear friend to our club, the one and only Diane Andrews from the In Black and White. And of course, they're going to be introduced in a few minutes, but we just really welcome our special guest and his beautiful wife, Sheila, Kendall Qualls, our main speaker. All right, I wanted to give y'all a little update from our last meeting. For those of you who were here, you'll know what I'm talking about, but I might need to rehash for those who were not here. So our last meeting in June, we had a Zoom speaker. It was Joe Altman, who spoke to us from Colorado. He is a conservative cybersecurity expert. And our dear Secretary of State, Kyle Orduan, attended that meeting. And as you will recall, and this is news for those of you who were not here, at the end of the meeting, Kyle got up and went to the microphone. Joe Altman lives just outside of Denver. We did not know this, but he went to the microphone and said, "Joe, It so happens, I'm gonna be flying up to Denver on Friday, July 9th. Would you be willing to sit down and go with me in greater depth about all your findings that point to a fraudulent 2020 election and what I need to learn as Secretary of State? And they had that meeting, and it was just great. I can tell they now, yes, isn't it exciting? We made a difference!
Yeah.
So they had that meeting. I can tell they have a very friendly, trusting relationship. Also, Colin made some great new contacts. One of them is a former senator in Michigan, Patrick Kolbach is his name. And he's very much in the know of what transpired in Michigan in the 2020 election. And I gather that Kyle will maintain contact with him. Also, he's going to visit Texas and see what transformative changes they have made in their voting processes. So he's really pursuing good for the citizens of Louisiana. Also, Katie Alexander, wait, Katie! Right there. Okay. Katie and her sweet husband, Chris Alexander, picked me up last night. Some of you might not know I had some eye surgery, detached retina. Anyway, I don't drive at night. So they were so sweet to pick me up, and we attended the Hay Rides fundraiser in Mandeville. Kyle was the main speaker, and we just continue to hear great things. I think he has really made the turn. He even proclaimed that we're going to look at paper ballot options with the proper technology. Yeah. So also, several of us spoke with him last night. He's not sure he can make it. He's checking his calendar to see whether he can attend a meeting that's going to be held August 10th, 11th, and 12th in South Dakota. It is being hosted and funded by who I think is an absolute American hero, Mike Lindell.
Oh, wow.
Who will have all the top tier cybersecurity experts there. And Kyle has to be in Des Moines for a Secretaries of State conference on August 12th, but he's checking to see if he can be there the first 2 days. So now y'all are all up to date. Okay, on that. Katie, any more, Christy? Okay. Second, I'm so proud. I want to congratulate a new member of our club, Christy Hyde. Yeah. She is now the Louisiana Federation of Republican Women fundraising chair. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Also, I just want to make an announcement that there's going to be a rally on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at the Capitol. It's not being done by Republican women, but it is being done by a conservative group. The purpose is to peacefully protest all these patriots that are being held in jails and solitary confinement just because they dare to go to the Capitol on January 6th to support President Trump. So if anyone's available to go to the Capitol this Saturday morning, that would be a great thing to attend.
What time? I'm sorry.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Yeah. And finally, let's see. Finally, I want to just mention the veto session. Ray Garofalo might want to mention something about that when he comes to speak for a few minutes after Kendall. But I was so proud of the head of the LAGOP, Louis Gurvich. He's been coming out with some strong letters and editorials, and he did that with regard to the session. And if you haven't seen Louis's statement, I want to read a little of it to you. He says, I am calling on Speaker Clay Schexnayder to immediately replace all Democratic House committee chairs with Republicans who are members, don't know what's happening, of the Conservative Caucus. Thank you. If this does not happen, then a broader conversation about how the House of Representatives is run will become necessary. Go, Louis.
Yay.
I think I would offer this, but just to reiterate, we had 67 of 68 House Republicans vote for the override of the veto in the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. The only Republican who voted against us is Representative Joe Stagney, S-T-A-G-N-I, Joe Stagney of Kenner, okay, who is being targeted for recall.
Good.
Yes, yeah. And then also, as you know, 26 of 27 Senate Republicans voted to override the governor's veto of that same bill, and only the infamous Ronnie Johns failed to show up. These two guys, Joe Stagney and Ronnie Johns, they're on our radar, okay? So they better be afeared of Republican women. All right, with that, we have two special announcements. I will let Diane Andrews come up first. Y'all know I have already mentioned how fantastic Diane Andrews is. Y'all know about her show. And she's going to be introducing our speaker, but she has a special announcement right now.
I just wanted you to know we're filming Diane Andrews in black and white. My cameraman guy brought it here in the back. And if you don't want to be, I have a press release you can sign. Or if you don't want to be on it, we can make sure you're not. I just wanted you to know that's my cameraman, Don Trezino, back there that I brought over to film this. Because Kendall, after this, is going to, we're going to the studio and do CRT shows. Susan's going to be a part of that. And that's why he was down here and I had him come with us here.
Good deal.
But anyone that does not want to be in background on television. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Jerry, if you would go ahead and come up, Jerry Brett of the Republican State Central Committee is going to just tell us briefly about these cards that are sitting at our tables that discuss the principles and values of the Louisiana Republican Party.
Thank you, Debbie. So what you should find on your table, these cards, and some are red and some are blue. But basically what it does is it identifies what are the beliefs and principles of the Republican Party for the state of Louisiana. In April, at our Republican State Central Committee meeting, this was nominated and it was endorsed at that meeting. And so what this provides you is something you can keep with you, that if you're ever talking with somebody and they're asking what the Republicans stand for, what do they believe, this can give you a quick guide as to what we believe. And kind of following up to the prayer that began the meeting with and talking about God, the very first one on here relates to we are one nation under God.
Yeah.
We have the right to worship God as we see fit. But this is basically just a listing of our beliefs and principles as Republicans, and it's for your use to share or to be able to talk with people about.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge that Diane Andrews is the real reason that we have Kendall and Sheila Qualls with us today. As she mentioned, they're going to be going over to her studio immediately after the luncheon. And right now, she is going to introduce our special speaker. Also, would y'all just check, make sure your cell phones are off. And we do ask you, for the sake of the people, especially in the back, to please refrain from talking to your neighbor while our speakers are speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hi, you just heard me a moment ago, but I wanted to introduce someone very special. It is a very privilege of mine to introduce Mr. Kendall Qualls, because he is a very special man. We just met in fact, we basically just met today. But I was looking for Rashad Turner. You may know of him, the whistleblower in St. Paul, Minnesota, about the school system. He was part of Black Lives Matter. I saw him on television. That's what I do. I find the people that I think are making a real impact, and I try to get them on my show. So Kendall, we ended up speaking, and he had already looked at my information because I looked at him. He said, "We're cut from the same cloth, right?" I said, "Well, I would like to zoom you in." And he said, "No, I'm coming back."
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear. If you see every issue you see today, you're going to see on my show. I've been doing this almost 6 years, and it's Black Lives Matter, I talked about 6 years ago with the Marxists. But Kendall is a very special man. He ran for the United States Representative House last year, and he became the Republican candidate. And that was his first time out.
Wow.
His first time running and he got 45% of the vote.
That's
I
great.
very, very against the incumbent Democrat. He started off in Harlem, New York, and he came from two parents, neither one had high school degrees. His mother then sent him to Oklahoma to live with his father. He ended up finishing high school, and he went on to become an officer in the Army. And I applaud everyone who has served this country, whether it's the police department or whether it is the armed services. So we thank you for your service. His wife, Sheila's beautiful wife, and they met in high school. I just heard in Oklahoma. So they've been together for many years and have 5 children.
Wow.
Kendall, not only did he finish high school, go to the Army, he ended up getting a BA in political science, an MA in communications, and an MBA. So we know that's
Wow.
in business, right?
Yeah.
So he did better than I think any of his 4 siblings did, and as far as education-wise. So we want to thank him for his services. We really want to thank him for what he's done and continue to do. He started Take Charge, which is one word, which I hated 2 words too, but it is one word, in January 18th of 2021. He just started this. As I said, he did lose that 3rd congressional district, or, you know, he's not finished yet, right? So he's got a lot more to do. And we want to bring him up and talk about why is he so enthused in helping with these CRT. And that's why I'm doing a school choice series, and CRT, critical race theory. I will say this, I just left CPAC. And a lot of y'all know that I was selected as leader of the CPAC. I was right there in front of Fox and CNN. It was amazing. 500 meetings over there. And I interviewed quite a bit of people, including Vernon Jones, who's running for governor.
Yeah.
The first black to run for governor since Reconstruction in Georgia, who was a Democrat last year. We changed and we talked about that. I also interviewed U.S. Rep. Louis Gohmert. I met everybody. But I want to say something Donald Trump said to us. He said, he spoke 2.5 hours. And he said, tell Trump is on his side, but of course he's not using it. But he said, and I will say this to you because he said it, and he said to spread this word, Democrats are smart. That's number 1. He said they stick together and they're more conniving than anyone will ever meet. And he said we should be more like them in many ways because we don't stick together. It was an amazing experience. So let's bring up Kendall to talk about CRT.
Thank you so much. I tell you what, I am honored, literally honored and humbled to be here. And yes, I said I would come down. I tell people, you know what, I feel like half the time I'm like Paul Revere and the rifleman, Chuck Connors. That's what we need right now in America. I got my voice in the back. So, you know, before I get started, I always like, you know, to introduce my wife Sheila and tell the story how we met. And this is a true story. People always ask if it's really true. But yes, we did meet in high school. I have a good friend of mine that wanted to take her to the senior prom. Now, he was really tall and lanky, kind of uncoordinated. So he asked me to ask Sheila in his stead. And being a good friend that I was, I did so. I took him up. I said, yes, Cedric, I'll definitely ask Sheila for you. So I went to Sheila. I said, Sheila, you know, Cedric wants to take you to the high school prom. He's a really good guy. You know, would you consider going with him? And she said, no, I don't think so. And I tried because I was a good friend. I said, look, he drives a Ford Mustang GT. He's a good guy. Wouldn't you go with him? She said, no, I don't think so. So at that point, I felt like I fulfilled my fiduciary responsibility. And I stepped out of that role, and I said, well, a little birdie told me that you're free for the prom. Like Paul Harvey used to say, now you know the rest of the story. Well, guys, thank you so much for having me down here. I think it's so important that we rally the troops, we rally Americans, and let them know that the country we love, the country we know, is under fire. Now, you haven't known that in the last few months, but it really is. But what I want to do is give you encouragement that there's more of us than there are them.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is get people off the couches because we've been living off the fumes of our grandparents' blessings and sacrifices and all the things they've done. We never had to do this kind of work for our freedoms. They did. and we've been living off of that. So it's time for us, and I'm going to share a little story about how we can actually do that, and what I'm doing now. I never ran for political office. I never wanted to. And, not to say anything about our elected officials here and former elected officials. I didn't want to be a politician, but I felt like I had to get involved because of what I've seen in my adopted home state of Minnesota. Now there, we have some people that you might see quite often. So I'm in the western suburbs. It's the most affluent of the district in the state. But in Minneapolis itself is Ilhan Omar. Our Attorney General is Keith Ellison. He was the first representative to use the Quran to swear himself into Congress. So we've got characters. Not to but just to see who he is. And he's almost in partnership with George Soros and his execution of his office. So I felt like I had to do something. So let me kind of give you a reason why I felt like I had to do something. This kid has started his life in Harlem, New York, and Oklahoma. And I hate standing behind the podium. I usually have a limit. So I'll stand in front of it just because I'm a rebel. I ate my chocolate cake before the salad. So that's just how I roll. So let me just say, unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was small. When my dad came back to Vietnam in 1968, we moved from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne, to Harlem, New York. Now, in the late 1960s, Harlem, New York was like Chicago today, times 10. It was the epicenter for drugs, violence, gangs, and everything. And I'll never forget it. My mom took us 5 kids to Harlem because that's where her mother lived, my maternal grandmother. And the day we got off the Greyhound bus, okay, we didn't fly, we took the Greyhound bus. Grand Central Station, we take a city bus to 125th Street and 8th Avenue. We walk 2 blocks. The last block to get there, we're almost there to Grand Central. We're held up in broad daylight. Luggage in hand, still there, everything.
I'm good.
And I never forget my mother's words. She said, "Mr. Please, this is all the money I have." And I can remember some guy standing not far away, but barely stand up. He was skinny. I didn't know if he was on drugs or he was drunk. He said, "Lady, that man doesn't care if you have 5 kids or 10 kids. You better give him all your money." That was New York City day one. So that was my life. So I know what it's like to live in a community where the police are unfunded. Okay, the thugs rule the streets. The mobs rule the streets. At that time, we didn't have direct deposit. So when the Social Security checks would come, and other government assistance checks would come every month, the guys knew, the drunk knew who to target and when to do it, because they knew what comes at the end of the month. And all the moms, I saw them, all the moms, my aunts, and they would all hide the money, never take their purse, but the person was. So they knew the routine because the thugs ruled the streets, not the police. I used to fight nearly 2 to 3 days a week in elementary school. Again, this is back in 1968, 1969. Elementary school, 2 to 3 days a week. That wasn't the issue. It was I never knew what was going to happen when I used to walk home to our public housing project. We lived on the 10th floor, apartment 10A. The elevator didn't work half the time, so I'd have to walk the stairs. Walking the stairs wasn't the issue. It was going through the stairwell because the drug addicts would knock out the light bulbs and it would be pitch dark because they were shooting up heroin in the stairwell. So I would navigate around those guys. Finally get up to the 10th floor, knock on the door, felt like it forever. My mom would open all the locks on the doors. Finally opened it up. It was like a ray of sunshine coming through in a dark cave. And my mom was from Savannah, Georgia originally, and she believed that cleanliness is close to godliness. And every time I walked in, it was like, smelled like pine salt. And she would just have high standards for us. She said, "Kendall, just because you live in a place like this, doesn't mean you have to live like you're from a place like this." She had high standards for us. She wanted us to do well and be well. But unfortunately, I was on the younger side of the group, and my older brothers and sisters were getting absorbed into the street culture of Harlem. And she couldn't handle all of us by herself. Every night she used to put us to bed, I could see the weight of the world and the stress and worry on her face and on her eyebrows and when she put us to bed. And I just remember just subconsciously thinking, I never want to have that happen when I get older. I don't want to be the guy that abandoned my wife, or like my mother was. And you know what? All she wanted to be was a mom. Half the time I saw her, she goes in her apron. Never had a driver's license. She just wanted to be a mom. But she couldn't do it on her own. So my father came and got me about 4 years after that. My father came and got me and my younger brother to live with him in Oklahoma. And now he was a drill sergeant, still on active duty. And when your father's drill sergeant, you only get in trouble once. On one offense. If it happens again, you're on a missing person report. You're never seen again. And so he came and got me and my younger brother to live with him. And now because he was paying alimony and child support, all he could afford was a trailer in a small trailer park. So I tell people, literally, and I have been called trailer trash, ghetto kid, and a lot worse in this country. But here's the thing about our country that I got a chance to witness firsthand. Where you start in life is not where you have to stay in life in this country. Okay? You can determine your destiny, you can. Now, it's not easy. Look, I tell my kids, anything in life that's worth having is not easy. So when they complain about the hard work and everything, I said, look, let's get after it. Welcome to America. Okay? Where you start in life is not where you have to stay in life. And so what I did, I worked all my way. I didn't know how to be successful, what it took to be successful. I knew it started with an education though. And so I worked full time through college, worked from 4 p.m. in the evening to 2 in the morning. Got up at 7:30, went to class. Did that for 4 years. But I was also in the Army Reserves through college, okay? And I was in ROTC. And at that time, I got commissioned as a second lieutenant when I was 19 years old. Wow. So I was a junior in college. So if you ever have read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, it's called Outliers. And this idea of 10,000 hours of high performance of something, you will become like expert at it. And in this, he was like Michael Jordan, for example, in basketball, Bill Gates, in computers, the Beatles, and music, 10,000 hours, whatever your field of study, you become an expert at it. Well, I started at a very young age in leadership by an organization that's been training leaders for over 200 years. That's the United States Army. I had men reporting into me that was my father's age. I made all the goofy junior mistakes you make as a leader at a very young age. And then after I graduated from college, I went on active duty as a field artillery officer. At that time, we still had tactical nuclear weapons. See, this is when the leadership piece was kicking in. 2 years after I got on active duty, I got responsible for our battalion, 18 guns, and the nuclear response. If the president ever had to activate the nuclear codes, the guy that falls behind it with the football, a little 2-minute. On my unit, I was responsible for the release of that, and I was 23 years old. I was a kid from Harlem in the trailer park, responsible for the tactical delivery of that, 23. 2 years after that, I got promoted to captain, and I got sent to South Korea. So at this time, and this is one of the reasons I got involved in politics, because number one, I just think we have all the great things to say about our country, but we never hear it. All the great things and true things, and we don't have to make anything up like the other guys. All the great things to say about our country, we never hear it. And so I always make fun of the Republican Party that, they can't tell you I love you without a spreadsheet. Because we never connect with people, both head and heart, okay, intellectually and emotionally. So I bring this up as an example of my time in Korea. You got one ethnic group divided by a line of freedom. Really, it's the best living case study there is. Divided by a line of freedom. And I saw it close hand. Their cousins in the north, the Koreans in the north, today they're shorter and smaller than their cousins in the south because of nutritional deficits over 4 generations of not having freedom like their cousins in the south. When I was there, I call it Korea 1.0. I was in 1989, 1990. They just started exporting their materials and their goods to around the world. Today, I call it Korea 2.0. Their cars are ubiquitous across the country. Honda, Kias, they replaced GE appliances in most American homes with Samsung and LG. They chose free market capitalism, not democratic socialism. We need to tell our own elected officials about that, okay?
Absolutely.
After 5 5 years on active duty after leaving Korea, I decided I wanted to go into the civilian world and do something different and really get stable, because I didn't want to move around so much like my parents did, and call someplace home. And I joined Johnson & Johnson, and I joined the corporate world. I wound up moving 9 times in 25 years. Here we go. Each one of my kids was born in a different city. But she will be all that easy, of course. But here's the thing, I joined Johnson & Johnson, on the healthcare side, started in sales and sales management. Later went on and got another master's degree. At that time I had 3. And look, I tell people, look, I'm not boasting about. I believe in education, but here's the one thing I know. I find out about education more than anything in this country. It was after I got my 3rd master's degree, I found out I didn't need those to be successful in the United States because I already had a PhD. They go, well, what do you mean by that? I was poor, hungry, and determined. All you need is 75% of what you need to be successful in this country is fire in the belly. And yeah, you need education. It could be trade school. It doesn't have to be college. It could be anything. But if you have that fire in the belly, you know what? You're more than halfway there. And so. When I got promoted to the home office at Johnson & Johnson, the leadership thing's kicking in. I just had my MBA in strategy, and so I got promoted in marketing, junior marketer. A year later, product manager. After that, product director. And fourth year, group product director. Had a $95 million budget for $1 billion brand that we grew from 0 to $1 billion as a commercial team. Now I'm in New Jersey. I'm 37 years old. I'm an hour away from where we were held up when I was 7 years old, 30 years previously, at a $95 million budget. It's just very different. Same kid, different circumstances. Only in this country. So this is what I'm going to talk about why critical race theory is a lie at best. It's a downright deception to the American people at worst. It's evil, to be honest with you. Okay? And why? Because again, I tell people I'm no one special. I'm no one exceptional. I live in an exceptional country. I serve an exceptional God. And so, here's one of the things I want to share, and I'm going to share this a little bit with my slides, is that, for me, it was all about getting career achievement, financial. How do I distance myself from my poverty that I grew up in? And someone invited me when I got that first job in Dallas in sales with Johnson & Johnson. Someone invited me to church. I said, "Oh, geez, no, not that." And the only reason I went because it was a family friend. So I'm going to get my slides here going. I already talked about my education, so I'm not going to do that again. So the church I went to, I had never heard this guy before. His name was Tony Evans. He's a pastor in Dallas, Texas. I had never heard the Bible taught that way. So not preached, but actually taught. He was the first black pastor to get a PhD from Dallas Theological Seminary. And it was just a very different experience for me. My plan was to go into that church and leave and never come back. I went into that church and I never left. I went a year later. I got baptized there, and I became a Christian. I made Jesus Christ my Lord and Savior. And that holistic approach to life was the biggest difference for me. My siblings, unfortunately, had a tough life. Again, a lot of them, grew up, lived in the streets and that type of thing. My kids are the only ones that know what it's like to grow up with a mom and dad in a home. And I don't say that to boast or brag or talk about my achievements. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy what we're going through as a country. It's a tragedy what my family's going through. We're going to talk about why critical race theory is even it's a deflection at most. So later on in one of our moves, Master Cato was one of our pastors, and then I didn't know any of these people as a new Christian, any of these pastors. And then later when we moved to Chicago, Joel Stoll used to be the president of the Moody Bible College. So our family just got some great discipleships, some great Christian leaders. It's just phenomenal for us. So what I talk about in critical race theory, and this is important to understand, critical race theory wants to use racial disparities as to justify their agenda. They say, we have to do this critical race theory. We have to teach your kids this because look at the disparities that we see in education, in finances, and everything that we have between black and white. And I tell people, it's not racial disparity. It only looks that way because we're 50 years ahead, but basically what it is, it's not white privilege, it's two-parent privilege. Okay? It's two-parent privilege. It only looks like racial disparities because we're 50 years ahead of everyone else. So what we're doing, I'm going to tell you what we're doing in the Twin Cities and how, God just wants to turn things around really in a surprising way. In the black community, before we had help from the government in the 60s, we used to be focused on faith, family, and education. It was nearly, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, nearly 80% of the black community were two-parent families. 80%. We went from 80% two-parent families to 80% fatherless homes in our lifetime without one national initiative to reverse the trend. That's the scandal. That's the scandal. Critical race theory wants you to take the eye off the ball because there's been a threat to nuclear family already in the black community, but it's spreading beyond the black community. They don't want anyone to know about it, but that's the number one issue. And it's the number one issue how we address most of the disparities. Probably 95% of all the disparities that we have in this country and issues are that issue alone. So what happened? What happened? Why did it change from 80%? So I tell this story. In 1965, they introduced a program that never existed in this country before. We actually incentivized women to have children as long as they remain unmarried. And when you say that out loud, it sounds immoral, because it is. In fact, when you look at that chart there at the bottom left-hand slide, you'll see between 1960 and 1970, caseloads for aid to family with dependent children, that program, it increased by 200% between 1960 and 1970. Okay, again, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, nearly 80% two-parent families, and then this program was introduced at the same time. In fact, we were warned about this by a former U.S. Senator from New York, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He said, look, right now, there's 24% of the black community unwed births. So again, I want to make sure I clarify, this is not divorced families. These are unwed births, like no father in the home when the time the child was born. They said, if this continues, these people will be cut off from the American dream. They won't be able to participate in the free market system. They won't be able to function well in schools. We know the data. He was told to sit down, be quiet, and shut up. He was racist. This was 1965. Everything that he said in the 65-page report has come to fruition. You can Google it, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, and his report. It's come to fruition. You can see this chart. You can't see it from the back. It's from 1965 to 2010. It's gone from 25% to 72%. In parts of North Minneapolis, the predominantly black part of the community, it's almost 90% fatherless homes. That's the beginning. That's the real beginning of disparity. Okay? This crock that they're trying to push with critical race theory is a lie, and it's a way to create division between us as Americans and have us debating something totally different to keep our eye off the ball. All right? You can see this particular slide. All of this data, by the way, you can get this on my website at takechargemn.com. And also the Center for American Experiment has this as well in Minnesota. But all of this is published data. And all of this is either public or CDC or federal government. So this one, you can see in 1960, you can see the huge drop in marriage within the marriage age of black women, and statistically significant compared to other demographics. And this is what's created in our culture. It's a cultural difference. I can tell you that the young girl that was on the left, so that's a 1969, 1970 photo on the left. And those kids are more prepared to take advantage and be successful in today's America than they were, the time when that picture was taken. More so than the guys on the right.
Yeah.
The guys on the right, that's not the black culture. That's the one they created from government dependency. Now, I'm going to tell you, if I was a kid and I was dressed like that, walking out the door, my drill sergeant followed. I tell you, I would be on that missing person report. My face would be on a milk carton. Okay? That's the difference. That is not the. So what we're doing, and sadly, because of those disparities, because of that program, we're number one in all the wrong things. The CDC puts out a report every year on the health of Americans. They do it nationally as a roll-up nationally, and they do it by demographic. This particular chart is for young black men, for black males. It's a busy chart, but look to the far left, you'll see ages 1 to 19. Typically, that's your pediatric population. Typically, the cause of death on pediatric kids is usually birth defects, childhood cancer, some heart disease, some other type of birth-related disease. Homicide is the only one for young black males for any other demographic. I'm going to clear it. This is not police shootings. This is black on black crime. And pediatric kids. The next column over is also black on black crime. This is a symptom of the problem. Now, if you saw the government look at this report, they'll say, well, we got gun violence. It's not gun violence. It's violence. Okay? We got the violence problem. And it's a symptom of the previous slide, I say, fatherless homes. When it comes to diabetes, this is this busy slide and chart. Look at the far right column. You can look at this one and you'll see by demographic, black Americans, number one in diabetes. We'll go fast now. When it comes to obesity, number one in demographic in obesity. Sexually transmitted diseases, although we're 12% of the population, we're number one in cases of STDs, number one in cases of HIV. Okay, only 12% of the population. These are symptoms of a broad problem. Every time the government gets involved, there's a siloed approach. Well, we need new programs on these things, and we need to spend more money. They never want to address, ever want to address the nuclear family as a solution. I'm going to take the critical race theory. They have pages and pages of solutions, of things they want to take from you and give to everybody else. They want to label everyone and everything. The nuclear family, or strengthening the nuclear family, is not even on the last page, on the last item. It's not on there at all, because they don't want it to be. You can't, your founding fathers said this, two things you can't have as a self-governing country. You've got to have a virtuous population, okay? And you have to have a literate population. And they're failing, our government's failing on both, okay? Education is number one in Minneapolis. Black and Hispanic kids, they graduate lower. Kids from Mississippi graduate higher grades of high school than kids from Minneapolis. And usually they're top on quality scores in the state on nearly everything except this. But the same schools, there's faith-based schools. They recruit kids from the same community, same street. They graduate over 95% of the kids, and they test scores above the national average. So it's not a skin color issue. It's an expectation issue, and again, it's a home-based issue. It's absolutely sad. Now, look, I've not been in politics. I've discovered the details of this in the last 2 years. Critical race theory, again, they want to push this as a way to distract from the real problems that we have. I tell you, I share this issue because this issue of fatherless homes is not just in the black community, spreading. For the first time in American history, 50% of all births are to unwed mothers under age 30 and under. Okay? And if you look at white and Hispanic communities, it's growing. If you ever wonder, man, I've never seen this kind of behavior in a public square before, because we never had this before. Okay? We never had this before. So how's it going to change? Well, luckily we have Christians in the room, because you think like, man, my God, we can't do this. You know what? That's right. With men it's impossible, but with God,
All things are possible.
That's right. So what are we doing? Here's what I've done. I'm going on the offense. I hate playing defense. There's another reason I decided to go run for office. man, I so want to play offense, and that's what we're doing. We're going into black communities of the Twin Cities, and we're recruiting people to help turn the culture back to its roots of faith, family, and education. And here's one thing I just said.
So good.
And when I speak to people, this is not a political issue. This is an American issue. It's a cultural issue. I say to women, especially the moms and grandmoms, God did not intend for women to raise children alone with them. And they nod their head. That's right. And I talk to the boys, the teenage boys, do you want to be a father like your father was? No, they don't. But they don't know what to do next. And that's where we're coming in. We're coming in with people and from the surrounding communities that want to help. Okay, a lot of this help is really being examples, being mentors, being marriage mentors. I would love to show you one of our videos, but I'm not going to do it right now. But again, go to our website, takechargemn.com. We're producing videos that are just bringing tears to people's eyes, want to get involved, and we're bringing people from the community, from the black community, no one's getting compensated, to help turn the culture back to where it was. We started with moms. I said moms are catalysts to change, and grandmoms, and bigger boots on the ground for this. And we're getting a few good men too. We got some. But here's some of the things we're doing. So on Father's Day, we had like 6 guys. We took out a half-page ad in the Minneapolis Star Tribune. And I mentioned, hey, and these are a few good men. In our lifetime, we went from 80% two-parent family to 80% fatherless homes. These men want to help turn it around. And these had like six guys walking, alongside each other. I wish I had 7, because I would have had like a magnificent 7. Cowboy hats and guns. Well, like, man, that's right. We're coming to take over, right? But here's what, by the end of the year, my goal is to get anywhere between 75 to 100 women, moms and grandmoms, in the Twin Cities, educating young people about returning to faith, family education, and making marriage, reconstituting marriage as a standard expectation. Marriage, that's how you change legacy. That's how you change culture. And we're doing that. And then we're going to do that with our short little videos that we put out of young women, young girls in wedding dresses, getting married. And that's standard. And why is that important? So that's the videos we'll be producing. So why is that important? So here's the data. Again, connecting head and heart. Justice Department every year put out a report on where is the safest relationship for women and children. They know because they get the 911 domestic calls. Where do they go? Where do the police officers go when they get called? Well, one of the least places they go is the married families. Now, I'm not saying every marriage is perfect, but they got the calls, and where do they go? They go to the live-ins and to shack ups. I don't know what they call them. Cohabitating. Right? Marriage is the safest relationship for women and children. The data's there. When it comes to wealth, now this is the one that the critical race theory will never show you this slide. I'm going to show it to you. Now this is when they talk about financial disparities. The blue bar is finance. So I go from left to right. So Asians earn the most, $81,000 per household. And it goes for whites at $68,000. Then you see Hispanics and blacks at $40,000 on the far right. What they never show you is the gray bar. Unwed birth. So the percentage of unwed birth by demographic. Okay? There's a direct correlation. Okay? They'll never show you this. So you want this slide, you can get this slide again from our website, you can download it, and you can just say, here you go. Right? But also on my website is, you got the data's great, Kendall, and I got this from parents. I've been trained over 2,000 parents on how to fight back in school boards. I said, this is great, Kendall, but the first thing they say, they call me a racist as soon as I say something like this. I said, look, first of all, don't worry about it. Usually, it's a white person calling you racist anyway, so don't worry about it. Who are they to call you racist? Second is, here, and I have examples on this thing. It's like when they say this, you say that. When they say this, you say that. So on that website, you can download that little script, and you can put in your own words. But the first thing, for example, I'll say, look, all you have to say is, you believe what Martin Luther King believed. That content of character is what we should judge people on, not color of skin. Are you trying to tell me that Martin Luther King was wrong? And just let it hang there. Don't say a word. Let them tap dance for that. And then when they say, well, that was maybe then, but now it's different, now it's, well, and then just come back and say, well, who are you to change it? Who are you to say that? This is America. We don't wait for someone coming down from Mount Olympus, come down with a scroll and say, hear ye, this is the new. No, we don't do that. So always stay on the offense. You have nothing to be on defense about. This is America. How people want to define their life and pursue their life, that's up to them. And be armed with data. Here's another one. You know, I tell people, African Americans in this country are doing great. What do you mean? I said, well, African, talking about, like, for example, Nigerians. Yep. Nigerians that come to this country legally, they earn 17% more than the average American. Not the 17% more than the average black American, and they earn 17% more than the average American. They come here and they look at this country and they see opportunities. And if they see barriers, that's okay. There were bigger barriers at home. You know what? I can get over these barriers. These barriers, I need an education, and I don't have money. Guess what? I'm going to work 2 jobs to get the money. They do that. That's what we used to do. That's what our parents used to do. So anyway, this is one slide that you can download. Here's another one. This one right here should be public policy for marriage at the state and federal level. This is a 10-year-old slide. It's not new. All of the elected officials know this stuff, especially in policy. Marriage reduces poverty by anywhere from 80 to 90%, regardless of race. Regardless, when you remove all variables, this is what happens. You can see in the black community, look at this, it drops from 35% to 7%. Be armed with data, and don't go on the defense. I tell people, we don't have a racist problem in this country. We have a political agenda problem. And we do. And they use people at their expense. It is shameful. What I've learned in my short time of being in politics, God bless you, sir. I know you're Secretary of State. You've been involved for 30 years. You lasted longer than I could. It is disdainful what they've done to Americans in order to stay in power and be in power. Disdainful. So here's what I encourage you to do. If you have family, your friends, if any capacity you have, recruit someone to run for city council, school board, state politics. In fact, we need Americans. We need Americans to come off the bench and start running for office and be civic-minded, because they know that they want to make this look harder than it really is, to keep people on the sidelines. We need Americans involved. So as I move forward, guys, I want to share this with you. This is really an anti-nuclear agenda. It's critical race theory. Let me just make sure you guys understand. Critical race theory is not a new civil rights movement. There's no Martin Luther King in front of this thing. It's not a black-led movement. It's not a if Black Lives Matter, they're just their tactical dogs on the leash. They really are. It's a leftist, progressive movement using those disparity numbers as their agenda. It is literally a far left progressive movement. I mean, Al Sharpton's not even in front of this thing. All right? And you'll never see this as a solution, because they don't want a strong nuclear family in our country. All right, I talked about education already. As I conclude, I'm in Minneapolis, our adopted home state. We lived there for 7 years now. One of our kids have graduated, a couple of our kids have graduated from college there. I tell you, I've gotten so much stronger in the winters, man. I never thought I could last in like 20 below. But you know what? I've gotten like those guys. Their lineage is from literally the Vikings, right? And so I always talk about Sheila, she's my shield maiden. And as long as it's not below 0, we're good. It's good. But they want this to be known and remembered in Minneapolis. To George Floyd and the riots and the burning and everything that goes with it. You know what's going to happen? By the grace of God, this is what's going to be coming out of Minneapolis. That's going to be known for is this where you can't we've only been up and running 6 months, and I've gotten emails and calls from 20 other cities. Can we start a Take Charge chapter in Houston, in Memphis, in Milwaukee, in DC, in LA? Wow. And we're going to launch a program at this fall called the Prodigal Project. That's right, and we're coming back home based on the principles that we all know well from Prodigal, but they're also American principles. And you know, America was centered. They say, God we trust, not in Fauci we trust. And this last slide I want to share this with you. It's been a long road for us to get here from my family. I don't want this to be the exception in our culture anymore. This used to be the norm. Family pictures with marriage and kids used to be the norm in the black culture. And we're going to bring it back. And I'm going straight to the community. I'm not going to a black church. I'm not going to any institution. I'm going right to the people. So far right now, we have 25 people heading to 30 that are volunteering doing this work in the community. I'm so excited, I'm honored, and I'm blessed to do it. And I'm going to end with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's this. When I was in Harlem as a kid, and oftentimes in the winter, it was so cold that we only had one radiator on the wall. And that radiator wouldn't heat the whole apartment. So my grandmother would put down the oven, and you know, the oven from the kitchen would heat the other half. And a lot of times the pilot light would go out. And so they had me, because the pilot light was underneath the oven, and I'd strike a match, and I'd go in, I'd crawl and get it, and I'd get all dirty, cleaning myself off, but it would warm the family. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what? I'm going around the country, I'm going around our state, and I'm lighting that pilot light of freedom. And I'm not going to let it go out. These guys don't know what's coming. I want you to join me in helping us keep our country safe and keep it warm.
Wow.
Just want to let you know, your bite of treats is some things we love here in Louisiana. So thank you for leaving a piece of your heart here with us, and you take a little piece of the things we love home with you.
Oh, there we go.
So, are you open to a couple questions?
I am, yes.
I think we've got time for one or two questions.
I've heard recently on the news something called I'm probably going to get it wrong, the Abolitionist Education Project or
I just heard about that.
That's frightening.
Yeah. So you know what do we have? What do we have? So the question was, and I heard about this abolitionist project. That project, along with 1619, these are revisionist type of organization that want to revise our history of our country. Sadly, our kids don't know our history. I'm not just talking about black kids. I'm talking in general. We did a road tour across Minnesota, and one of the reasons why we did it is that one of the board members for, we have a think tank in the state called the Center for American Experiment. One of the board members was taking his daughter to school. It was one of the highest ranking school districts in the state. His change fell out of his pocket in the car, and his granddaughter picked it up. She's in the second grade, and she looked at the quarter and said, "Oh, I know this guy, he's a bad guy." And he handed it back to her dad. Now, on the quarter is George Washington. And all she knew was he was the first president and he was a slave owner. So critical race theory, it's been around longer than we thought. They've been teaching history by omission. Not putting things in context. None of this. So this revisionist history has been going on for quite some time. And this is why we really need to do any school choice. Wherever parents want to send their kids, that's where the money should be going.
Right. Because the founder of it, or the leader of that program right now, said, in the news clip I saw, she said, we don't want to change education, we want to dismantle it.
Yeah. They've already want to, indoctrinate our kids. Look, we were fortunate because we moved so much. We homeschooled our kids, so we missed the bullet. We didn't. They weren't indoctrinated. We didn't have to unlearn things. But here's the thing: no other country in the world fought a civil war to free slaves to become citizens later on. And that civil war cost us dearly as far as the number of lives lost. We never put that into context. That's never part of the story. And you can never isolate these issues of history and make them part of today's standards. It's absolutely wrong. And then that's why you have people wanting to tear down not only Thomas Jefferson, but Abraham Lincoln, like God's sake. This is why we need Americans to fight for this. Yes, ma'am.
You may have said this and I might have missed it, but are you trying to establish your organization in every state? Is that the goal?
Yes and no. So we first started in Minneapolis. We were thinking maybe we could go across the country, but we had no idea that it was the need and the earnestness will become so fast. So we're letting it happen organically, and as we begin to look at launching beyond the state at the end of the year, we're going to look at what cities have the infrastructure, the people in place for us to go to first.
Needs to happen.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I'm involved with the grassroots movement right now to critical race theory in schools with the school board, because we have some pretty major things going on by October 12th. They're going to be making decisions on history that they taught the curriculum for the next 7 years. Do y'all partner with people like us that could help maybe educate the Bessie board, the Board of Education here?
Yes, we do. In fact, we partner with 3 other organizations that focus on school choice, improving standards in the state of Minnesota, and then we partner very closely with our think tank there as well. It is important to partner with people that have got some have more history, some have more, they have the younger people with passion, that type of thing, but yes, we do.
Okay, I'm gonna if I could get your information so we could.
Yeah, I can help you. And also, I just got back from Dallas, and so in South Lake, Texas, this community that, because of critical race theory, they replaced, I think, 3 of the school board members and the mayor on critical race theory alone by 40 percentage points.
That's what we're doing.
And they have a template. They have a template for how do you want to do this. If you want to do this, how to do it in your local community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
So now we have the pleasure of having Representative Ray Garofalo here with us, who is on the front line of this issue right here in Louisiana.
Don't like speaking behind the podium, so I will stand up to the side, although I'm a little bit shorter than my friend Kendall. I'm so inspired by what I just heard. I mean it sincerely. I didn't know the facts. I didn't try to come up with all of the reasoning that you came up with regarding black families and everything else. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about what you're doing and working with you and getting some more information from you, Kendall. I appreciate you coming down today and sharing that with us. And of course, I know that I'm the only thing standing between you guys and getting back to work or back to your families. So I'll try not to take too long. I do have a tendency to speak a little bit, and certainly, Debbie, if you guys want me to come back, I'll be willing to talk about what happened this year to me and what happened in the pizza override session. Well, there's so many things. I would like to, if you don't mind, just touch on a few of the issues that Kendall talked about. Number one, he is so right when he says we need to run. We understand what's going on. I can tell you after what happened to me this year, this is a war. This is a war that our opponents, the Marxists, are not going to stop. They will stop at nothing to win this war. And I'm so frustrated because not only what happened to me, but because I see colleagues who, number one, either don't understand or don't care, or number two, even worse, they want to propagate and they want to instill this Marxist, this insidious theory into our classrooms. That scares me more than I can tell you. So one of the main things I've been focusing on when I get to speak to groups like this, and let me digress just a little bit. My wife is president of Republican Women in St. Bernard Parish. She apologizes for not being here today, but I can tell you I have felt the love from the Republican women. And and my colleagues know that when they do things, the Republican women are watching, and that means they're watching, and I appreciate that. But you guys need to educate your friends, your family, your relatives, anybody that you can. You understand what's going on. You need to make sure that they understand what's going on. Because in this war, if we don't use the same tactics that our opponents are using, we're going to lose. I'm a strong believer in our Constitution, in our Declaration of Independence. I lost it, and a few people were there when we went to the Standards Review Committee It was 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And I really got emotional, and I try not to do that when I'm speaking because I tend to lose track. But the fact of the matter is we had a teacher from New Orleans who's on this social studies standards review committee who stood in front of, he shouldn't stand up, in front of this whole group and said, our founding documents are flawed. The Declaration of Independence is a flawed document, and our Constitution is a flawed document. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that they're perfect, but what I will say is they are the most perfect founding documents in the history of the world. I'm constantly amazed at the foresight that our founders had when they crafted this document and the longevity. Now, there are theories going around about the life cycle of different societies. And if you Google it, you can find, I don't remember the gentleman who's been studying this, and generally it's around 200 years that a society flourishes. They go from bondage to freedom, to abundance, to not caring, back to reliance on the government, and then back into bondage. Well, I'm afraid, I'm here to tell you right now that what I see going on in our country is we are not caring. There is way too much of the thought around that, we have everything, nobody's going to take it away from us, and that's giving our enemies the perfect opportunity to come in and swoop down and say, hey, this is what we need to do. We need to start teaching people that these are flawed documents. The United States is the most successful country in the history of the world. Let me emphasize that. The history of the world. We've taken more people out of bondage. We've given more people opportunity and chance at freedom than any other country ever has. If you use that one fact only when you're speaking to people, that to me is the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from this. And anyone, this entire critical race theory, and knowing now what is behind it, but I mean, I knew that it was a Marxist movement, no question about it. But the fact that they're using these fatherless and not two-parent families to instill this insidious cancer, I don't even know a better way to put it, into our classrooms and to lie to our students, now it's coming more full circle for me. So please, get involved, and I will say it again, run for school board. I know, for years, most traditional-minded Americans, we go getting back to that lifestyle of the life cycle of a society. We take for granted that our elected officials are going to represent us and do what we think is the right thing to do. We can't do that anymore. I've seen it from the inside. I've seen where we have too much apathy in our elected officials. We have too much people who really want to integrate this Marxist. There's too much of it. You guys need to get involved now. Run for school board. I'm going to beg you a little bit more than Kendall did. We have to be on the fighting front lines of this, and always defend our Constitution. Along with that, there's one key word that Kendall didn't mention, and I want to make sure that it's on the tip of your radar, so when you hear it, you know that it is just a pseudonym for Marxism, and that word is equity. Yes. You have to look equity versus equality every day. Equality is what this country and our republic was founded on. Everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. What the equity people want to do is they want to guarantee outcomes so that everyone has the same outcome. Everyone has the same home, everyone has the same food on their table. You can't do that because there are so many makers and there are so many takers. It's an impossible dream. It's been proven throughout the history of the world again. Look, when you look at the big picture and you look at the history of the world, that the makers all of a sudden will stop making because they realize that the takers are taking everything, all of their hard work. There's no incentive for them to continue to make. So just keep that in mind, that word equity, when you hear it, and we all know the government, we may not all know, I know for sure, and let me just tell you that the Biden administration, that one of his first days in office, he signed an executive order stating that every government entity will use equity as a deciding factor when they award contracts, when they hire people. So everything that the government does now is supposed to be based on an equitable basis, not an equality basis. It's wrong, it's not fair, and it's certainly not what this country was founded on. So keep that in mind. Get out, talk to your friends, and I need your help. I need your help vehemently. Thank you so much for the opportunity today. God bless everybody in this room. God bless this great state of Louisiana. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you. not canceled. You know, and I've been speaking to more groups now than I ever have. Thank you for that.
That's good.
Thank you very much. This word has been spread, and I'm so pleased to meet Kendall today, because I hate to keep saying this, but I'm going to go to his website, I'm going to download his slides, and I want to start using what I've learned today to educate people as to part of the reason behind this movement. It's very important that they understand why this is going on. Thank you.
Well, we, the Republican women, we are not going to let you be canceled, for sure. And so we just have a very small token of our appreciation for you, our esteem for you, the courage that you showed. And not only that, I mean, I know they tried to cancel you, but you were so eloquent and statesmanlike and kind. And it didn't stop their meanness one little bit. They just came with, you know, all barrels firing. It was a travesty. But we want you to know you are a hero. So we are presenting you with our little Shining Star Award.
Oh, look.
And we're very proud of you, and we consider you truly one of our state heroes. Thank you, Ray.
I will be more than willing, and I'd love to come back and speak to you guys and give you
Yes.
some more details about what happened.
Yes.
Debbie, I just like to mention one thing. So Ray talked about running for school board, and that's extremely important. A lot of you, though, probably have children or grandchildren who are associated with private schools. This is also happening there.
Yes.
Yes.
Do not just leave the public schools, think that's it. It's also the private schools.
When I say school board, I mean every school board.
Yep.
I know a lot of people in this room, I hope, I don't want to get political here. A lot of people send their children to private Catholic school because they see what's going on in the public school system. I chose to give my children Catholic education. I sat on the school board for my children in elementary school. Now, fortunately for us, we didn't have to deal with this. But I can name the schools in New Orleans right now who are implementing critical race theory into their curriculum. Catholic schools, the Archbishop in New Orleans has already said that this is something that they have to look at. Jesuit High School, Ursuline, I'm naming them because I think people need to know. Mount Carmel, Sacred Heart, all of these mainline, what I would consider to have been traditional type schools, are now starting to implement critical race theory. So my friends in New Orleans, I have encouraged them strongly to start running for those private and Catholic school boards. They all have a school board. And the school board has a lot of influence with the principals. So yes, everyone in this room should be involved, if you have children or grandchildren, with your school's school boards. It's critical right now. Not just that, I meant to say this, I felt like I was a little rushed, but it's parish council, it's city council, and legislature. Because what I'm talking about with my colleagues who either don't care, could care less, they are uneducated, or they want to implement this, is on every level of government. And if we don't stand up and get involved ourselves, knowing what's going on to fight it, they're going to win. And I'm repeating myself, and I'm going to do that. But please listen to me. I'm telling you, after what happened to me this year, they will stop at nothing to implement this into our school systems. Please, Diane.
I wanted to say thank you for all your service and all you do. We really appreciate it. Still appreciate it. We all need it. But I wanted to say also, 21 years ago, we were the third richest country in the world back then. Chavez came in 7 years later for $12 billion in the tour. It was a bus ride.
And he earned that money, right? He earned that money, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure. Just like we talk about ladies were equity, they take your profit. Obama, Biden, when they went on, when Obama was the president, they started something where they built Section 8 homes next to all suburbs. They started that then, and Trump stopped it, he and Dr. Ben Carson. But they started that and initiated that again. In China, they called it CCT 100 years ago. When they started the revolution in China, they did the same thing in the school system. They said
Look, there are a lot of details that we really need to get into because people need to
I
know
talk
about
about
it.
all this on my show.
But I don't know that today. I was trying not to get too detailed today, but yeah, absolutely.
We're taking this afternoon if you want to.
I'll be glad to get involved as much as I can. We need to get the word out. Thank you guys again.
Okay, we're coming to the close. We just need about 5